Greetings and welcome. Welcome to Pieces of the Puzzle. I wanted to come on here today to continue on with what I started last week, and kind of summarize some things that I talked about last week. I want to start with a brief summary and move on. Okay, so last week I did a video. Actually, it was more like March 9th. I like to give dates too. Today is March 21, March the 21st. Okay, and on March 9th I did a video, and it was titled Cornfield Doesn't Do Deliveries. I did that video because I don't believe Andrew Cornfield was sent there just to deliver some prescription medications to Prince for the purpose of alleviating a drug addiction. I just think that's nonsense. I went over the reasons. It's because, first of all, Andrew Cornfield is an astute young man. You know, he's got some ambitions of his own, and he's got some majors that he was majoring in at the particular time in college. And it wouldn't make very much sense for his father to send him on a mission that could possibly jeopardize his future. The way the story goes, his father sent him to Paisley Park to deliver some buprenorphine and Suboxone. This is a controlled substance that's designed to help alleviate the effects of opioid addictions. And the whole concept of him sending him on a plane and sending him on such a mission is just is ridiculous to me. You know, there were a lot of options Howard Cornfield could have had. I said in my last video he could have sent it FedEx. He could have sent Dr. Schellenberg an email telling him the type of prescriptions that he could order. He could have guided Dr. Schellenberg through the process as to how to work with Prince without actually showing up himself or sending his son. I also touched on the fact that neither Dr. Howard Cornfield or Andrew Cornfield had a license to practice medicine in Minnesota. So the whole thing is basically is staged. I believe it's staged because there were a lot of benefits that came out of Prince faking his death. And I don't know if it was all his thoughts or his intentions, but I'm pretty sure he had to go through with something. He had to go through with this. So to think that Howard Cornfield was going to send Andrew to deal with an opioid addiction. And let me mention one other thing about this opioid addiction. Prince had his surgery back in 2010, and it's just kind of odd that after 6 years that he would finally get to the point where he was just so stressed out or so strung out on opioids that he would have to get help with it. Most of the time when people get on opioids, it's immediately after surgery. Prince had 6 years to be on opioids, and there was no evidence that he was an addict in all the 6 years between 2010 and 2016. But all of a sudden, in 2016, he's having a crisis. You know, the plane is landing in Moline, Illinois, which is nonsensical and not really substantiated by the Quad City International Airport. There's some documents that were signed, but it doesn't look like anything was actually signed by Prince. So it's just nonsensical to think that it's a storyline that they're trying to build, and they had to build to the climax of him dying in the elevator, and that whole scene about dying in the elevator, that ties in with some some religious activities. Okay, and I don't want to spend too much time on religion, but I do want to say that our religions has certain types of rituals that we practice, even though a lot of people don't consider their rituals. Some people feel like their rituals are more like ceremonies or sacraments or different things, but they're still rituals. And people have a tendency to put the word ritual on things that are not of the three major religions. Well, we all practice rituals and religions, and what happened in the elevator was something that was symbolized some religious activity. Okay, because I also mentioned that it was odd for his body to be found in an elevator, and I think everybody knows this. That's the reason why nobody really bought the story of him dying in the elevator. You know, they thought that they were going to push the narrative. They thought they were going to get on the news and say, breaking news today, our music icon Prince Rogers Nelson was found dead today, you know, and they thought that they were going to sell it to everybody. They really expected everybody to buy into the narrative that Prince had died. I don't think they realized that he was going to have such a large following of people that were not going to buy into that. Now, we don't all agree as to what happened. Some people agree or believe that he is in fact dead. I think the majority of people believe he's dead. But they have different reasons. They don't believe that he died of an opioid addiction or overdose. Some people believe that he was murdered, and then there's the other people that believe that he committed suicide. And then, of course, there's a group of people that believe the whole thing is a hoax. So they did not think that 7 years later, people would still be going around and around in circles with this thing. But the bottom line is we all agree that it's some bull. Something is not right about this whole narrative. It's not correct. They thought they were going to sell a story and that we were just going to buy it. And it's not that easy. It's just, it was too many holes in the story. So getting back to what was supposed to be happening with Andrew Kornfield, after the body supposedly, I'm skipping around here, there were some supplements that were found in the house, and most of it was memory enhancing or anxiety prescriptions, but they didn't have too much to do. And I believe that it didn't have anything to do with opioid addiction, at least not much. But I believe that the memory enhancement supplements and the anxiety prescriptions were because Prince was faced with another problem, not opioid addiction. He knew that he was going to have to go through with this ritual or this ending of his public life. The only thing that died on April 21st, 2016 was Prince's public life. And he lived his public life through many alter egos. Now, I know people don't want to hear about alter egos and mind control and all that kind of stuff, but I'm sorry. It's very real and it's very applicable in this case. As you know, Prince Rogers Nelson was not born Prince Rogers Nelson. He was born Prince Roger Nelson. And what you might not think of is, I don't know, but Prince Rogers Nelson is an alter ego, just like many of the other alter egos that Prince assumed throughout his career. I want to show you a list of his alters. I hope they don't show up backwards. I didn't think about this. But I just put together a list of Prince's alters. The first one being Prince Rogers Nelson, with Roger with an S. That's not his real name. This alter ego is a rock star. He's a mega rock star. This alter ego had to be brought out of Prince because Prince was a very shy person. He was a musical genius. He could play all the instruments. He could sing and dance and everything, but he was very shy. He wouldn't do interviews. He wouldn't talk to anybody. So they had to bring this alter ego out. Now, some of these, I admit, could possibly be just nicknames, but most of them are alters. Like Skipper, that's a nickname he probably got when he was a baby. He was a child. Somebody else probably gave him that name. He might look like a little Skipper. I don't know. Then Kid, he named himself that name when he was in high school. Sometimes he would get mad at his father, go to school and tell his friends to call him the Kid. He didn't want to be called Prince because he knew Prince was an important name to his father. His father had named his band Prince and then named his son. He named him Prince. So he went to school and he told his friends to call him the Kid. Then, of course, you saw, he had the Alexander Nevermind, and he had, this one wrote the song for Sheena Easton. Then we have Camille, very significant alter ego. Okay, very significant. She made a lot of songs. She was around for 2 years. That alter ego came with the alter ego. This is something else. Camille came with an alter ego named Spooky Electric. Okay, and Spooky Electric has come back again to say some things, on, we'll get into Spooky Electric, but Spooky Electric has come back. Now, Camille made music from 1986 to 1988. She made the Black Album, which Prince, when he came back to his own thinking, didn't want released because he thought it was evil. Shows just how detached he can be from his own alters. She made Sign of the Times, which were songs from the Black Album because Warner Brothers released the music anyway against Prince's wishes. And Camille made I forgot the name of this, the Factory song, but she made 3 albums. Okay, anyway, to move on, while he was going through a dispute with Warner Brothers, he named himself, he was Tora, which meant attack. He made the Exodus album. Let me see, what is this? Christopher Tracy made Manic Monday, The Love Symbol, Paisley Park. He sometimes will call himself Paisley Park. The Purple One. Joey Coco. Joey Coco made the song You're My Love for Kenny Rogers. Madhouse. Okay. Let me see. We have the Star Company. We have Victor with The Sacrifice of Victor. I don't know if he made that song or he's just associated with it, but that's Victor, because the song was about him. Sacrifice of Victor was about him. Peter Bravestrong, he used that name for traveling. Jamie Starr wrote with the Time and Vanity. The artist formerly known as Prince, that's the acronym for that, when he got fed up with Warner Brothers and changed his own name to something that they couldn't pronounce or they couldn't use a signature for, because Warner Brothers, they do all of their work through Prince's alter, Prince Rogers Nelson with an S. They don't deal with Prince Roger Nelson. Warner Brothers only dealt with Prince Rogers Nelson. That was his business name. That was his show business name. That was his alter ego name. That was a name that had that would bring out all the swag and all the cool sexiness that Prince had. That was a name that, or the alter that was able to relate to his audience and make us fall in love with him. Very important. There's a difference between Prince Rogers Nelson and Prince Roger Nelson. Prince Roger Nelson is a little bit too quiet and reserved for all of that. Freddie the Phantom, Gemini, Batman. He made Batman. P-Man, As If We Care. As If We Care. I didn't know that was one, but I found out about that one. The Star Company, the High Prince of Pop, and the Prince of Funk. And there are probably many that's not even on this list that I don't know about. Okay, and there might be some that he just didn't reveal to anybody. You know, these are people or personalities that lives inside of his head. And I kind of think that because he had so many of them, they helped him to create different types of music. So instead of coming into a block, you know how some people get writer's block, or, you know, instead of getting writer's block, he just would become a different person mentally, and then he could write through another personality. That's just my take on this thing. But I have done some research on altars and the reason why people create them. They create altars to protect their mind against abusive situations. A lot of children will create an altar when they are abused. When they find themselves psychologically or physically abused or humiliated or disgraced, they will create an alter ego to be rather than themselves. So Prince had all these altars. So I'm saying all this because when they called for Andrew Kornfield, they didn't call for him to bring prescription medications like the narrative says, like they say. They're trying to say that they sent for him to bring some buprenorphine and Suboxone. I don't believe that at all. Like I said, that's so nonsensical. It makes no sense for him to do that. He was brought out there because he had some work that he was doing in neuroscience. And this Prince and all these altars and ties in with scientists, neuroscientists. And Andrew Kornfield is the last one that he had to deal with. At the beginning of Prince's career, there was another neuroscience by the name of Howard Bloom. Howard Bloom was a neuroscientist. Howard Bloom was a social physicist. And he was a genius. He was a genius just like Prince was a genius. Prince was a musical genius. Howard Bloom is a scientist, straight up genius scientist that chose to work with the music industry, or may have been asked to come and work with the music industry. Okay, he didn't have to. He has been regarded up there with Einstein. His genius is regarded up there with Stephen Hawkins. He could have done anything. He could have been in a laboratory. He could have worked for NASA. But he didn't. He chose to work with the human mind. He chose to work, and he. Let me give you some background on this guy, Howard Bloom. Howard Bloom wrote. When he was a child, he would read 2 books a day. Well, most kids read just maybe a book or a half a book or just some pages from a book. He read 2 books a day. He was interested in the cosmos. He studied the cosmos. He studied microbiology. And when he graduated from college, he was offered 4 fellowships to in post-college degrees to 4 major universities to study neuroscience. And he took one. He became a neuroscientist. But he got 4 fellowships to postgraduate school. And like I said, he was also a master social physicist. Social physicists, they're the type of people that can mathematically predict how the masses of people will react to a certain event. So let's say, for example, they come on the news and say that Prince is dead. He can mathematically say that 80% or 90% of all people are going to just straight up believe it. He can mathematically predict about how long it's going to take for the music industry and or the Prince estate to become billionaires after such an event, because everybody's going to run out and buy everything Prince. Okay, so he can mathematically make those types of predictions. That's a social physicist. He knows the behavior of the masses of people, or he studies the behavior of the masses of people, and he studies the behavior of individuals, being a neuroscientist. Now, neuroscientists, that's an important field of study. You know, it helps people with disorders, helps people with brain injuries, and they're doing a lot of work with it. And Howard Bloom was right there at the right time. But for him to go into the music business, because he even says that he wasn't a vinyl person. He wasn't a person that was just always into music. But he got into the music business, and he helped launch the careers of a lot of famous people. To name a few, of course, Prince, Michael Jackson, Bob Marley, Bette Midler, Aerosmith, Queen, Run DMC, Billy Joel, and a lot more that I really should be mentioning, but more, okay? A great deal of people, because he knew how to get them to connect with the audience. You know, there are a lot of people that are like one-time hits. You know, they can make a song and make an album, and everybody buys that album, and then you don't hear from them anymore. Well, they didn't make the connection. They made the hit, they made the album, but they failed to make the connection with the audience. Well, Prince was going down that road. He had made an album, and but he had not connected with the audience yet. And Howard Bloom had to help him make a connection. And boy, when he did, when he made that connection, we haven't unconnected ourselves yet. We still Prince groupies. Okay, we still are his fan base, or his friend base, as he would say. We can't get enough of him. Okay, he made a connection. Now, I'm going to let you listen to him, but before I let him put this video on. He talks about bringing out the gods inside of Prince and making a soul exchange between himself and the audience. Now, Howard Bloom, being a scientist, a neuroscientist, and I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that Andrew Kornfield, remember we started out by talking about Andrew Kornfield. Andrew Kornfield is also a neuroscientist, okay? But I'm getting off on the first one that Prince came in contact with, and this is Howard Bloom, okay? Now, Howard Bloom, he talked about bringing out the gods in Prince. He didn't have to do that. Prince had already talked about having another person living inside of him when he was on the Oprah Winfrey Show years ago. Okay, he said that they had discovered, whoever they is, had discovered that there was another person living inside of him. Okay, Howard Bloom helped him make a connection and bring out the gods in him, as Howard says. But these gods are not gods. These gods are alter egos. All right? And besides, Howard Bloom don't believe in God. Howard Bloom is an atheist. He calls himself a Zionist Jew. He's an atheist Zionist Jew. That's what he considers himself to be. But he's an atheist. okay, regardless of his nationality or his birth religious affiliation. He's an atheist. So it's not like he believes in bringing out a God that lives in the soul, like a lot of people consider God to be, okay, or a God that lives in heaven, that a lot of people consider God to be. He's bringing out altars in Prince, and that's what he brought out. And that's what died on April 21st, 2016, or that's what ended on that day. An alter ego, a superstar alter. So I want you to check out Howard Bloom and listen to him and think about some things for a few minutes. When I do my videos, I don't ask people or request that people believe everything I say. I just ask people to just think about some things and think about the nonsensical events that occurred just prior to his so-called death, and those nonsensical things that happened after his death. Okay, and we put the pieces of the puzzle together. Don't just listen to me, listen to other people that's on YouTube that's giving their best. It all comes together in the end. Okay, and until next time. So just want you to check out Howard Bloom. Okay, but until next time, peace.
And what year is this? 2016. Prince died. I was going to give you a podcast on Bernie Sanders, but the fact is that I worked for 7 years with Prince. In a sense, in the days in which I was doing public relations and career strategy in the music industry, Prince was my masterpiece. But he was my masterpiece because he was Prince's masterpiece. And I thought I would try to tell you a little bit about stuff I would have seen that you would not necessarily have seen. I started following Prince probably in 1978. He put out a first album. It made it on the R&B charts. Nobody seemed to notice. Nobody knew who he was. The R&B charts was its own ghetto. Most people in the record industry didn't even read the R&B charts. Then, a year later, in 1979, he put out his second album, Prince. An astonishing thing happened. No one knew who he was, and that album went platinum. I was paying attention the whole time. Then I got a message from Bob Cavallo, a phone call. Bob Cavallo was the man who had been hired to manage Prince. Bob Cavallo is a bloody fucking genius. And Bob said, I've come with this new artist, Prince. Would you like to work with him? Well, hell yes. I had been admiring whoever this person was from a distance for achieving impossible things, for with total anonymity, somehow climbing all the way to platinum on only his second album. And I was hired to go to work with Prince. The thing that struck me from the very beginning, first of all, I laid out my conditions. I had realized through years of work what it took for me to do my part in making a star. Music is an exchange of human soul. It is not the sale of a piece of plastic. It is not the sale of a download. It is not the sale of a concert ticket. It is a soul exchange. And for me to do my part, I needed to find the soul of the artist. And to do that, I needed a month to study everything that artist had ever written, everything that artist had ever said. And then I needed between 1 and 3 days alone with the artist to find something very specific. If you are an artist of any kind, a performing artist, when you sit down at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon in front of a blank computer screen or a blank piece of paper, you have writer's block. You need to write a lyric. You know you can never write another lyric again in your life. You have no idea of how you've written the lyrics for the songs before. And on a good day, by 4 o'clock, there's a lyric sitting in front of you. And on a really good day, the lyric is so utterly perfect that you feel it wrote itself through you. When you go on stage, the eyes, the pupils of the audience on some very good days dilate, they open wide. The faces melt. People come into a concert terribly self-conscious about the people behind them, the people on either side of them, and what those people will think of them. But if they become utterly fascinated by you, the performer on stage, that self-consciousness melts away and their faces melt as if they were wax, and somehow the energy of the entire audience comes together and it pours itself across the distance between you and those who are watching you and channels through you as if you were an empty pipe, goes into something higher inside of you and is utterly transmogrified, utterly transformed, and comes pouring out of you. The experience is so ecstatic, standing outside the body is what ecstasy means. So ecstatic that sometimes you have an out-of-body experience. You feel as if you are on the ceiling watching as you are danced around by a marionette through a force that you and the audience pass back and forth to each other like a reverberatory circuit in an old-style radio. It is an astonishing experience. My job was to find the you inside of you, the gods inside of you that wrote that lyric, the gods inside of you that took you over when that audience and you went ecstatic together. And to do that, I studied everything about you and needed to be alone totally with you. I had a call from...
Okay, so there you have it. Howard Bloom, the neuroscientist, the neurologist, the social physicist, the genius. He could have been any kind of scientist, but he chose to work with the human mind, and he chose to work for the music industry. Yeah, and he was able to bring out all the alter egos, or to help Prince get in touch with and bring out the alter egos in himself. And I'm bringing this up because the only person that died on April 21st, 2016 was one of Prince's alter egos, the one named Prince Rogers Nelson. Okay, if we recall, on April 20th, Prince sent everybody home that night so he could be alone. But I don't think he was alone at all. I think he was there with Andrew Kornfield, the second neuroscientist that we know about. They came into his life on that night to either help him remove Prince Rogers Nelson from Prince's consciousness, or to help Prince go into a deep catatonic sleep so that he could play like he's dead. A hypnotist, a person working with consciousness, can make you go to sleep, breathe very shallow. He can make you stiff as a board, like you got rigor mortis, but he can't make your body cold. You do remember, everybody that touched Prince said that he was warm to the touch. How would his body be warm after he was supposed to be dead for so many hours? It couldn't have been warm in Paisley Park. He had been walking around with a hat on. He still was found with a hat on. So it's not like it was hot in there. This is April. So I'm going to let you think on that. I want you to think about it. I know it seems crazy, but it's not crazy. It's not as crazy as some of the narrative that they've been trying to sell us. So with that, I just wanted to give you some food for thought. You don't have to believe everything that I say, but I just hope you think on it. All right? And until next time, I hope you show some love for one another and peace.